Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror, mystery, and sci-fi film called Let Her Out. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. After being violated and impregnated by a stranger, a motel cleaner repeatedly stabs herself, determined to end her pain. 23 years later, somewhere in the city, a bike courier named Helen goes to work and delivers a package to Roman, an artist interested in her. As it turns out, it is also Helen's birthday, so he gifts her a painted portrait of her. However, she doesn't seem too fond of the artwork because she thinks it doesn't look like her. Roman then starts to kiss her, and while she returns the kiss, she suddenly pushes him away after seeing herself in the mirror. Helen apologizes to Roman for her behavior, but the guy doesn't mind it, saying she's welcome to come back to him once she feels ready. That night, Helen hangs out with Molly, her best friend. They sit by the empty pool of a motel, where Helen's mother killed herself years ago while pregnant with her. Helen expresses her concern about being mentally ill like her mother, but Molly assures her that she's nothing like the woman. Then, when Molly parts with Helen to go to her theater rehearsal, she takes her friend's painting with her just for fun. Moments later, while leaving the motel, Helen looks away for a bit and gets hit by a car. She then wakes up in a hospital, sustaining major head injuries as well as a cast on her left arm. After getting discharged from the hospital, Molly throws a welcome home party for Helen, but she hides in her room instead. She also sees the painting on her bedside, so she turns it over before joining the party, just to make Molly happy. At the party, Helen comes across Ed, Molly's boyfriend, who shows a slight interest in her. He offers her some drugs, but she refuses. However, Helen eventually lets loose and joins in on the fun, even going for some drinks and dancing with her friends. But in a flash, Helen finds herself in some parking lot, riding her bicycle and almost getting hit by another car. She panics immediately, not knowing how she got there, and calls Molly. As Helen freaks out, Molly tells her that she heard her leave in the morning. Still, Helen has no recollection of ever doing so. Back in her room, Helen sees that the painting is once again turned over, so she hides it inside her closet instead and covers it with a shirt. After exercising in the gym, Helen washes up in the shower room and receives a call from Molly, notifying her that she'll have theater friends coming over to their apartment. Then, in the mirror, Helen suddenly sees a silhouette of a woman inside one of the shower stalls. She then opens the shower curtain and finds no one there, but a voice calls her from behind, making her turn around and see herself. However, the version of herself that Helen sees looks a bit different, and she suddenly has a vision of walking into Roman's place. Once again, Helen reappears somewhere with no recollection of how she got there. This time, she stands in front of Molly and her theater friends in their apartment, still wearing her towel from the gym. Confused, Helen drops her towel and quickly picks it up once she comes to her senses. She then walks away while Molly comes after her, noticing her bleeding foot. Molly demands to know where Helen has been, but she insists that she doesn't remember anything. After that, Helen inspects her foot and sees a shard of glass impaled on her, so she slowly pulls it out. Worried, Molly brings Helen to the doctor the next day for a checkup. The doctor asks her about her family history, but Helen is dismissive about it, refusing to let people think she's also crazy like her mother. So, as an alternative, the doctor just gives her an MRI scan to check for any concerning brain activity. The results come fast, and the doctor shows her the problems immediately. In the scans, she sees an undeveloped top portion of a spine and what appears to be a face. As it turns out, Helen had a twin that died in the womb that she absorbed into her skull, and it wasn't until she had the accident that triggered the activity in her brain. Unfortunately, since the accident, the mass starts to grow and put serious pressure on Helen's brain. The doctor wants to book her for surgery immediately, but Helen is still a bit apprehensive and says she'll think about it. Then, when the doctor leaves the room for a minute, Helen takes the stethoscope and puts it on her head, allowing her to hear a voice. Because of that, Helen says yes to the surgery, but she needs to wait for 3 more days. Back at home, Helen sees the painting once again propped up in the corner of her room, so she brings it to Roman's place to return it. She sees no one in the apartment, but instead finds Roman's laptop open, showing a video of them together from the time Helen lost awareness in the gym showers. She watches a video of Roman tied to his bed while she looks at the camera, and as she goes further into his apartment and finds a broken mirror, she immediately starts having flashbacks of what happened to her foot. Terrified, Helen takes Roman's laptop and rides her bicycle to a dumpster to get rid of the device, smashing it on the concrete until it breaks to pieces before throwing it in the dumpster. But as Helen walks away, she suddenly gags and starts to pull long strands of hair out of her mouth. She gets back home, feeling a bit disgusted, so she jumps in the shower to clean herself. Then, when she finishes, she touches the veins of her arm and feels tremendous pain, making her remember Roman as he chokes to death. As if that isn't enough, Helen sees writing on her mirror that says, "I am coming," using the same lipstick that she's holding. Helen tries to brush it off, but when she sees the painting back on her bed, despite leaving it at Roman's, she throws it in the dumpster. Feeling tired of everything that's been happening, Helen attempts to regain control by tying herself on the bed, trying to fight it off until her surgery. But, once again, Helen wakes up with evidence of leaving her bed, her hands untied, and she has zero recollection of anything that happened. Her private part is bloody and her feet are dirty, and she even sees a box cutter close to her. Molly's knocking then startles Helen, and as Molly reminds Helen that her show is starting in an hour, she also says she can't find Ed. However, in the end, Molly just leaves and agrees to meet Helen at the theater. Helen starts to get ready for the night, but she suddenly feels a stinging pain on her left arm through her cast. Then, on her way to the theater, the pain worsens until she can barely even walk, seeing her arm look bruised and veiny. Helen also starts having flashbacks of being with Ed, and when she can't take the pain any longer, she goes inside a back room and cracks her cast open by banging it on the concrete wall. As she takes off the cast, she sees that her injury somehow got worse, despite being told it would heal well in a week. The skin around her stitches is heavily bruised, and she feels something inside her arm. With no other choice, Helen forces the stitches off her arm and finds an entire finger inside. She then cleans herself up before heading back home and bumps into Ed, who confesses his love for her. No matter how much Helen tries to send Ed away, the guy is crazy for her, and even mentions what they did the previous night, sleeping together in the motel room where her mother died. However, Helen doesn't even remember it. Nonetheless, Ed still perseveres, thinking that Helen might reciprocate his feelings. So she starts coming on to him and gets him to take off his pants in the alleyway, but she takes out her box cutter and threatens to cut off his member. Then, suddenly, Helen drops her weapon and leaves Ed alone, distraught and telling her not to say a word to Molly before taking the knife with him. After that, as Helen walks back, she sees her twin in the alleyway and convinces herself that it's not real, so it soon disappears. That night, Helen is once again determined to fight against what's taking control of her body, so she props up a chair against the door to lock herself in and ties her feet and arms to the bed, making sure she won't be able to leave. When Helen wakes up, she is relieved to see that she's still tied to the bed, her door still locked. However, when she goes out of her room, she sees Molly looking upset at their dinner table. She's angry at Helen because of the weird way she's been acting, and even when Helen tries to explain that it's because of her brain, Molly doesn't believe her. Molly asks Helen about Ed because she hasn't been calling him back, but Helen denies everything until she finally confesses that Ed tried coming onto her, so she threatened him with a knife. Molly tells Helen that she's going to call the police because she's starting to become a danger to herself and other people, but this just makes Helen more defensive, shouting at Molly that she's not crazy. Through the course of their argument, Helen starts to lose control of her mind, saying weird things then trying to gain control of herself again. She finds herself pinning Molly to the ground, but when she comes back to her senses, she runs back to her room and tells Molly to run away from her because she doesn't want her to get hurt. But Molly is relentless, trying to confront her about what she did to Ed. Helen hurriedly tries to tie herself to the bed, but when Molly bursts into the room, her twin once again takes control of her mind and body, choking Molly on the floor. Eventually, Helen runs out of the apartment and sees Ed come for her, forcing her to get inside his car. He even pulls out the same knife that Helen used on him. She immediately runs down to the empty subways to escape from Ed, but he catches up to her and pins her to one of the posts, angry that she humiliated him. He drops the knife and forces himself on Helen, ignoring her protests as he kisses her. However, when he throws Helen to the ground, her twin takes control of her body and attacks him. As she tackles Ed to the ground, she grabs the knife on the floor and repeatedly stabs him before trying to cut off his head. Then, when she comes to her senses, she sees the bloody mess and finds another written message from her twin saying, "I am here." Horrified, Helen runs away from the crime scene and gets into Ed's car, covered in blood. She then calls Molly and finally admits that something is seriously wrong with her, adding that her twin is inside her body, trying to take control of her. Helen thinks that she should have died with her twin, so she says farewell to Molly before driving back to the motel and trying to kill herself. Fed up, Helen attempts to overdose and slits her wrist using a shard of glass from a mirror she's broken, determined to stop her evil twin. Meanwhile, a worried Molly rides a bicycle to find Helen. Unfortunately, Helen's twin is set on taking over her body so she could finally have her chance to live. Helen then sees her twin, who tells her that she hid inside of her after their mother tried to kill them. The evil twin also says that she's the one who kept Helen alive, but she's done waiting and wants to finally come out. On the other hand, Molly gets to the motel and goes straight to Helen inside the room. Helen tries to send her away, but Molly doesn't want to leave her behind. Helen then starts to lose her mind, her twin removing her skin bit by bit, while Molly watches in horror as she sees her friend slowly die because of her sister. Seconds later, Helen's twin crawls towards Molly as she locks herself in the bathroom and escapes through the window. When she gets outside, she looks around for Helen's twin, then runs to the car when she sees a chance, but she can't find the car keys. Because of that, Molly gets out of the car slowly, but Helen's twin appears behind her. Molly runs back inside the room and grabs one of the shards of glass from the bathroom before trying to crawl out the window again, but she's finally caught. Helen's twin throws her to the bathtub and starts to choke her, but she fights back, slowly bringing her hands up and slits the evil twin's throat. With no other choice, Molly leaves her dead friend behind, crying as she comes out of the motel in blood-stained clothes and departs on a bicycle.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.